Right, big one today, guys. Using the ground and doing something that maybe might be slightly different to what you think. Golf right now is irrespective of what you think your method is or what you think is important. If you're not using the ground, you are losing clubhead speed, you're losing ball speed, and whether we like it or not, golf has gone that way. Golf is a sport. It is no longer an old man sport. It's young generations bombing it 350. So let's find out a few tricks of the trade that might just help you pick up a bit of yardage. Right, so whether we like it or not, the game of golf has become a sport, right? It's become the most reactive sport that has had a monumental change in the way it thinks about scoring over the last sort of 5 years. Bryson DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, I mean, these guys are industry leaders on what they're doing. Matt Wolff, another example. But they're all using leg work, they're all using footwork, and they're definitely maximizing ground pressures. Now, ground pressures, okay, real simple ideas. Ground pressures is how much force you're applying into the ground, and for most of us, into the lead side in transition, and then what you then would react and get out of the ground in return. So the ideas of going up to the top of the backswing, we're all taught to then squat, get into our ground, increase our weight pressures, and then push up and back. That's what we're told. Now that's a really, really simple way to look at it, but incredibly difficult for many of us to impart or introduce into our game. It just isn't in our pattern. But if you can introduce it, you're probably going to find some benefits. But here's a couple of things I would say you've got to watch out for before you put it into your game. Now, for many of us, we're talking about the ideas of going up to the top of the backswing and squatting down into the downswing, where not only are we squatting, we are getting heavier, we're putting weight into our lead side, and we are trying to get ready to explode up out of the ground. That's a great idea, but for many of us, the ideas of going up to the top of the backswing, then down to the downswing, and then pushing back up, that's a lot. Like that's a lot to confuse someone. And especially when you take a look at the guys online and you talk about Matt Wolff, even people like Patrick Reed, who you wouldn't consider hits it a long way, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, their lead foot at impact is off the ground. They are going up to the top of the backswing, coming into impact, coming into impact, coming into impact. And as they pretty much release, when I say release, they're going to release from the ground. They're going to get out of the ground. And when they do so, this lead leg comes off the ground and then they move back and out. Very rarely will you see a top player keep their lead foot in the same position in which it started. And that's the trick of the trade for many of us. If we could just at least move our lead foot, now not to become difficult and compromise strike. So if it compromises strike, don't, because strike is king. But simply getting the ideas of allowing your lead foot to move, get pressure down and forward, and then move, get it off the ground. Even if you can move it a millimeter, you are starting to use the ground more than you ever used to. Then you can build and build and build. What you'll find is, as a result, that you have to put pressure to your lead side earlier to push up earlier. A lot of people will go up to the top of the backswing, press into their lead side, and no matter how much they try and get out the ground, they're still left side loaded, where yes, they've loaded the ground, but they haven't got their energy back out. So try and just put that into your game. A couple of practice swings where you go up to the top of the backswing, try and get down and get your left side getting off the ground, and then go through the shot. That's really, really going to help you. Now, a couple of tricks as well that might help you get rotated through the shot while you're pushing, because this is all about ground force. And what I tend to see with people when they work ground force is, yes, they'll get into the ground, but everything stays fairly closed. Everything stays closed, pelvis stays closed, chest stays closed. So if you can, try to go up to the top of the backswing, put pressure down as you rotate. So as I'm working down to my lead side, my pelvis is opening up and my chest is opening up, more importantly. But a lot of us, I find that difficult, I'll be honest, hands up. I find that entirely difficult to do. So for me, something that works for me is to cheat. I use a different idea of footwork in order to help my leg work. So for me, if I set myself up with my feet relatively pointing towards the golf ball, I like to splay them out a touch, that will help rotation. But in general, I like to feel like my lead foot opens up as I take the golf club back. What this simply does is it primes my weight moving forward a bit earlier in my sequence, and it also helps my lead hip rotate earlier in the downswing. Very simply, I used to get a little bit closed out to my footwork, and then all of a sudden my pivot was stuck. I wouldn't be able to push up and out the ground. So for me, I like to find the simple ideas of going up to the top of the backswing, and just before I do, I feel like my lead foot opens up. It's almost a bit of a tap. Now that is a bit of my trigger to start my downswing and start pressing down into the ground. It also helps me rotate. So that might just be a little nugget for many of you to really help yourself. But don't be worried about trying to push up off this lead side. As simple as you can, as quick as you can. It does not matter. I was a little bit late then. There we go, that's better. Try and get off this lead side, put pressure down, up and out. DJ would be in, and he'd be off the ground. Matt Wolf would be definitely off the ground. Start and put pressure into the ground to get out. It's going to feel like your left side is loading in, so you can explode up. When I feel like I explode up, I feel my left leg goes into a flexion, or a idea of a bent lead knee to an extended leg. My left hip going up, my left shoulder going up. So it's going to go down, up and out. Now this is a speed training exercise. It's going to make you think about golf differently, and it's going to compromise strike. But if you can slowly but surely enter that skill into your game, you're definitely going to find some speed. What you'll also start and think about is releasing your body differently rather than your hands. Many of us try and get the golf ball go further by hitting it harder with our hands, releasing the angles in the back of our right wrist to feel like we're delivering the golf club quicker. If you could start thinking about releasing your body rather than your hands, you are definitely going to see a better ball strike and a more consistent ball strike. Bigger muscles moving, more power, more stability. Hopefully that helps. I am gassed, absolutely gassed. I'm gonna have a coffee. Right, like, subscribe, do all the things you can do. Hope you're safe, hope you're well. Speak to you soon.